Gospel Sound and Vision presents Benny and the Fancy Dress Party. Story by Bernard H. Norris, drawings by Jesse Weir, music by Brian Gartrey, titles by Len Gambling. Benny is a little lad, about 10 years or so, and even though not very bad, he isn't good, you know. A chunky British schoolboy with rosy cheeks complete, his hair is never tidy, his socks down by his feet. He doesn't cause the trouble or do things which are wrong. He simply happens to be there to help it all along. He's got such good intentions, it really seems so sad that all his finest efforts never make folk glad. One day an invitation came, a party, fancy dress. Cool, I must wear a good disguise so nobody can guess. I wonder what we have to be. I'd better read this card. A person from the Bible? Well, that shouldn't be too hard. I could go there as Moses, or Aaron, Moses' brother, or Joseph, maybe Samson, King Saul, or any other. There's David and there's Daniel. Hey, that's a good suggestion. I'll go along as Daniel, and Asp can be a lion. Now Asp is Benny's doggy pal. She's got this funny name because they say she's all spare parts. I know it seems a shame. She's very loyal and faithful and patriotic too, and such a pal to Benny in all he tries to do. She isn't any breed of dog that you or I could spot. She's just a mixture of them all. So Asp is the name she's got. It's written on her collar, it's written on her dish, but since she cannot read a word, no other name she'd wish. The day arrived, and Benny dressed himself in robe and hat, and then he stuck some whiskers on his face, so proud of that. He'd got them from his mother's gloves. They really were black fur. He'd plucked out just a bit from each. He should have questioned her. And then he thought his face was pale. He'd make it dark, he thought. So after trying other things, he rubbed it with some dirt. All he needed now was just to disguise poor old Asp. She'd got to play her lion's part, and this was quite a task. He looked at Asp. She smiled at Ben. She doesn't look ferocious. If she goes with a smile like that, nobody will take notice. To make his doggy pal look fierce, he stuck her fur with treacle, then made it stick out all around. She really looked quite real. Now don't forget that you're a boy. You must act like a lion, and growl as fierce as anything, for this I must rely on. Asp understood. She bared her teeth, and then let out a growl. She really gave it everything. But then, an awful row. Hiccough, she went. Hiccough once more, and then hiccough again. Oh, crumbs, you just can't go like this. That was very plain. Oh, try and make her hold her breath. He held her mouth, and then he pushed his hanky on her nose, but still the hiccoughs came. A shock, that's it, that's what they say. I know, a great big bang. That will make Asp jump, and then she'll be as right as rain. Benny got behind her, but then she turned around. He tried again, but still she turned, and Benny gave a frown. I'll have to try and make her jump while she is looking on, for trying to get behind her just isn't any fun. She won't keep still a minute. If just a bone I had, I know, a piece of toffee, that will make her glad. Asp was very happy. The toffee was a treat. She lay down on the floor and held the piece between her feet. Then Benny took a deep breath and gave a sudden shout. Asp was so surprised at this, she blew the toffee out. It stuck behind her left paw. She couldn't get it off, but at least her hiccoughs finished. She didn't even cough. Okay, said Ben, we better go. It's time that we began. So off they went, and down the road both Asp and Benny ran. The house was most impressive, a really grand affair. Benny now was quite surprised to think that it was there. "I hope I've got the number right. 26 is true." But Benny hadn't checked the name. Not Grove, but Avenue. Now 26 the Avenue was full of fancy dresses, and all of them were having fun. There were no distresses. But 26 the Grove was quite another place, you see, and if a fancy dress appeared, 'twas unexpectedly. They too had something special on. It was a barbecue, and just to keep them happy, some entertainment too. Henry soon was due to come, performing dog as well, and he would soon make everybody laugh and clap as well. So when young Ben knocked at the door, they welcomed him with glee, and Ben and Asp just trotted in very happily. "The piano is all ready. It's specially tuned, you see. Perhaps you'd like to give us all a little medley." "Such a funny little man," the hostess did explain, "and such a sense of humor. His looks just make that plain." The people all politely, noddingly agreed. His queer appearance and his dog, now all right, it seemed. Asp and Benny looked so queer, some people had a doubt. But when the hostess welcomed him, the doubts were all cast out. "We are so glad that you have come. We hope you'll like it here. And now we all are ready for you to bring us cheer." Ben was quite amazed at this, but entered in the fun. "I suppose this is a kind of game they play with everyone." He sat down at the keyboard and found the middle C. "Now, when you recognize it, all join in with me." The people laughed at this remark, which made young Ben feel grand, and then he started playing, though only with one hand. "God Save the Queen," he started, and everyone stood up, which startled our musician, and indeed his pup. They all applauded at the end, to Benny's great relief. What a sense of humour! This really is a treat. Benny, thus encouraged, began to thump the keys, while Asp joined in with wailing howls, reaching to top C's. Remembering her lion's part, she also gave out growls, and bared her teeth and snarled as well, in between the howls. Benny stopped, stood up, and bowed. The people, somewhat shaken by this performance, clapped their hands, till Ben his bows had taken. Asp is ever sensitive to the big event, and felt that for this very moment she was heaven sent. She'd seen Ben bow, and so she thought she'd earn some treatment too. She began to sit and beg, and strain her every flew. By now the people all believed that this was really good, and Ben's peculiar music was simply very mod. Asp still looked peculiar, and when at last she rose, the people all applauded as she balanced on her toes. "Do go on," the hostess begged. "This really is a treat. Perhaps you'll show us how your dog can manage some big feat." Ben was puzzled. The phrase misunderstood. Feet to him meant those on legs. He'd got a different word. He asked her for some Wellingtons, which caused her some surprise, but 4 of these she quickly brought, then watched with startled eyes. Asp was most obliging. The lion's part to her included paws in Wellingtons, as well as extra fur. "She can't have bigger feet than this," Benny told the hostess. The people laughed and laughed at this. They thought it was the mostest. Asp stood on her front legs, then upon her back ones. When it came to acrobatics, Asp had got the knack-ons. The people all applauded. The performance had them thrilled. Their previous misgivings about them had been quelled. The hostess was delighted. She positively glowed, and on both Asp and Benny her tributes she bestowed. Benny took the Wellingtons off Asp's feet one by one, except that from her front left paw it simply wouldn't come. Of course, the piece of toffee. Ben remembered now. It was stuck on Asp's left paw. Oh dear, there'll be a row. Just then a ring came at the door. The sounds of voices flustered. My car broke down. I am so sorry. Though late, we're keen as mustard. My dog and I are ready. We're not too late, I hope. We had to come by taxi because our own car broke. Benny had the feeling that something had gone wrong. He wasn't quite sure what it was, but he would know ere long. Good night, he muttered hastily, and as the man appeared who'd come to entertain them, Benny disappeared. Asp was slow to follow. One paw was still wedged tight, inside the Wellington, you see, and so she said good night, with dignity and regal gait, and then slipped past the dog, who'd come along with Henry, who thought the whole thing odd. And suddenly the room was full of people loudly shouting, "Who was that person? After him! He had the whole room doubting. We told he wasn't genuine. What was he doing here? Catch him, someone, and his dog. Poor Ben's in trouble, I fear." At church that very Sunday, the preacher said that heaven is open to the folk to whom eternal life is given. No one else can get in there. You cannot wear disguise. No fancy dress can get you through. God will know all lies. My goodness, Benny thought, surprised. He knows my awful blunder, the party and the big mistake. Benny sat in wonder. When God looks at a person, he sees the heart inside. And you can't cover that up, no matter what disguise. God knows each single person. He knows your every sin, and no disguise you'll ever wear to heaven will get you in. You wear all kinds of fancy dress to cover up your guilt, but underneath the gaze of Jesus Christ, you know your wilt. The fancy dress, respectable. I always do my best. But that's not true. You know it too. It just won't pass the test. The sweet disguise, religion. To church I always go. But that alone is not enough to get you into heaven. No. How about I say my prayers and read the Bible daily? Is that a dress that's good enough? Oh no. Not even maybe. Then here's another. Giving gifts. To church I give a lot. But giving will not get you in, though you give all you've got. We have to wear the garment Jesus Christ has bought, with his own blood on Calvary, for this is what he taught. First believe he died for you when nailed upon a tree, and that he rose up from the dead and lives eternally. Then ask him to forgive you for every single sin. Open up your life to Jesus. Ask him to come in. Then God says you are given a robe of righteousness, and so you enter heaven without a fancy dress. Eternal life is given to you absolutely free, for all the price was paid when Jesus died at Calvary. Now go and tell another the great gift you received, because on Jesus Christ the Lord you've trusted and believed.